Thank you all for joining us here in person as well as on Zoom. This is going to be a fun discussion today. I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm Dr. Sanjay Iyer. I'm a movement disorders neurologist and also a medical director here at Memory and Movement Charlotte. Today we have the discreet pleasure of talking to Jennifer Reilly. Would you like to tell us something about yourself?
My name is Jennifer Reilly, and I live here in Charlotte, and I've had Parkinsons for 10 to 12 years diagnosed, and I get very anxious traveling in the airport.
And actually, this program, as we were putting it together, one of our nurses here, Kristen, that many of you know, she said, well, Cedric loves talking about his blog, but I was just on the phone with Jennifer for an hour trying to help her figure out how to manage her anxiety getting to the airport. So she said that would be a really interesting way of kind of talking through this. Cedric, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am Cedric Williams. Grew up out in the flatlands of Nebraska and spent most of my adult life in Colorado, and then came out here about 10 years ago. And I'm just on the quest to spend at least a week of vacation time in each and every one of the 50 states.
Very nice.
How many you got so far?
18.
You got a ways to go.
We also have Liz Erhartic here. She's the civil rights specialist lead and the ADA coordinator at the Charlotte Douglas Airport. How did you land in a role like that?
Yeah. I was lucky enough to get an internship at the airport before I graduated undergrad, and we were organizing our roles, and we decided to make a civil rights team specifically so we could put more focus on accessibility, and I just interviewed really well.
And of course, we have Dr. Charles Edwards II, Chuck as we affectionately call him. But Dr. Edwards, tell us a little bit about yourself as the founding physician for Memory and Movement Charlotte.
My name's Chuck Edwards, and I'm from Charlotte. I started, I did cardiac surgery here in Charlotte for almost 30 years, and then I had my parents both had dementia, which prompted me to start this clinic. This is our 10th anniversary coming up December 13th. And it's been amazing. My wife and I, Mary and I, started it. And basically that's it. Okay.
So, kind of diving a little bit deeper into some of the topics here, I want to start with Cedric. Tell me, when did your love for travel start? Where did this idea for the 50-state challenge come from? Where did the idea for your blog come from?
I would say the love of travel, I guess, probably didn't really start until I started traveling for work and realized all these different great places I was getting close to, but couldn't do because I had to work. And that wasn't until I was about 33, I think, that I had my first job where I was traveling for work. And it was in the first year and a half that I worked there. The combination of that, the actual work travel and the vacation time I got, ended up just in that first 18 months going to 11 different states I had never been to. And that was when I kind of went, okay, so start keeping track of where I've been and where I haven't been. And then I ended up this is when I lived in Colorado. And as I said, I grew up in Nebraska, so I'd actually never been to Georgia. And I went to a one-day intensive training in Atlanta, and it was this time of year, so the sun was going down early. So by the time my flight got into Atlanta, it was after dark. I took the light rail straight downtown to my hotel, which is also where the training was taking place. And then so I was inside that one building all day. And the next day, or that evening, I just went back on the light rail already after dark again, up to the airport and left. And I was like, yeah, I've been in Georgia, but I haven't seen it. So do I count that?
You don't miss anything. You didn't miss anything.
I don't know yet.
So, tell us, in terms of your perspective on travel, how did your diagnosis change your perspective on travel, or has it?
Well, one of the primary symptoms I've had to deal with, in fact, I would say probably the first Parkinson's symptom I had was that anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And the main way I've been able to handle it has been through the medication. Carbidopa, levodopa. Before I was on that, I actually had a full-on panic attack when I was set to fly to Germany to visit some family out there. And so I just couldn't get myself on the plane. I was just convinced that it was going to go down. And even after I took my lorazepam to calm my nerves, it was calm, but I still couldn't talk myself into it. I talked myself into it, yeah.
Didn't go down.
But you were actually at the gate trying to convince yourself to get on the plane?
Unfortunately, I was outside the TSA checkpoint,
Mm-hmm.
so I hadn't given them my luggage yet. They had to send off to Germany without me. But yeah, it was on the way basically to the airport.
Yeah. Tell us about your blog.
The blog is alternately the original idea was for it to be something that other young onset Parkinson's disease patients could kind of follow along and see what, kind of how it goes.
That's possible.
And it also turned into a place to document my travels, present and past. And then it also turned into a place for just plain deranged stuff that pops into my head.
A few of the folks here in the office actually follow your blog, and they tell us great things about it, and they're always trying to tell me where you are. So I'm glad that you're doing that for everyone. Jennifer, tell us when did your travel anxiety start? What specifically about the travel makes you anxious, and how do you try to mitigate that?
A couple things. I just got back from a pretty big trip, and I'm not a big fan of airports. Like, with the Parkinsons, it plays tricks with your mind sometimes. So what I like to do is know where I'm going exactly. Point A, point B, point C. And when that gets messed up, that's when the anxiety comes in. I wonder where am I going?
Like when they change your gate?
Yes, when gate changes. We were in Madrid, going to Madrid a little while ago.
You can't hear either, though.
In Spanish, we had to get from Terminal A to Terminal C, and it was 6 o'clock in the morning. It was so busy. My husband was great, and I just all of a sudden I had, a long panic attack. I mean, it wasn't that bad, but I just was got to get through this. And once you have the mindset from this is how it works for me, so I said, I'm going to make it through this airport. I did, and also what I did was I did a lot of them. So when we left on the international airport that we were going into, was their 88, the equivalent of 88, their 88 policies are.
Mm-hmm.
And Madrid, unless you have 2.5 hours from in between flights, you can't get a wheelchair. So it's but I did get one. So that was really, for me that was the hardest part of the trip.
Yeah.
But for me, most of the time is knowing where I'm going.
Does the anxiety start the night before? When does it?
This started. For me, the biggest thing that I was looking for, I had an appointment with Dr. Iyer, and I was and it was, it was new.
It builds.
It was also a huge trip for me. It was 2 weeks. There before, and I didn't know what to expect. I knew three time changes, and I knew all that. But the good thing about it is, I got through it, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And that's what I think. You can't, as long you gotta live your life, and you can't get, you gotta get,
I was checking I had a backpack, and I was checking my wallet, checking my boarding pass, and then I go and I do it again, and I just keep doing it over and over again. And so, part of it is the Parkinson's gives you that social anxiety, but just aging alone increases your anxiety. And as much as you want to plan for it, you really can't. You just have to kind of plow through it.
One of the specific issues as it relates to Parkinson's, people ask
Volume is full.
whether they're traveling across just a time zone or two or even going overseas. The mainstay of treatment, the levodopa, it works for about 4 hours. People are used to taking it every 4 hours on the dot when they're going through a regular day. Well, what do you do when you're traveling and when you land somewhere and 4 o'clock's not 4 o'clock? It's something else.
Yeah,
and so
just before you want to go to sleep.
You got to think about when you're going to be taking it. But I always tell folks, every 4 hours, even throughout the flight, and when you land, you kind of stay on the 4 hours. Once you go to sleep, start the day fresh the next day, and then that's how you kind of get through it. But we have a lot of discussions with our patients around, your medications and how do you adjust it, and when do you take it, and things like that. Just one of the specifics around the Parkinson's. Well, Liz, a couple of questions for you. So a lot of our patients are on various medications, or they may have different pumps, or whether they're an insulin pump. We're soon in the next year or so, we're hoping to have some pumps for Parkinson's with different medicines, and their deep brain stimulator devices and things. So with patients who have these types of things, what kind of paperwork do they need to carry on their person, or how do they navigate that when they get to the airport?
So this is going to be something where all that research ahead of time is going to be really helpful. And airlines might have different requirements for that. The TSA is going to be your first thing to tackle with going through security and seeing what can you put in your check-in bag, what can you put in your carry-on bag, things like that. The TSA has a really great database of very specific answers to questions about medications, about devices, what you can't have. If you medically necessary liquid medication, you can take more of that than you could take a shampoo and things like that. The devices, same thing. Like oxygen, for example, you can take that with you to the gate, and you can have that up until then. So paperwork, like if you have a service animal, there's going to be a form to fill for that. But you can look it up online or contact your airline to ask them specific questions so that you have everything that you need.
People with different devices, especially in our world, the deep brain stimulators and things like that, they often wonder, am I going to set the security? And that's not necessarily the case. It shouldn't set it up. But when you have a medical device like that, typically the company will give you it's like a credit card with the serial number of your device. You just got to keep that with you, and that way you can show it to them. I have a pacemaker, I have a DBS, I have whatever. So important to know that. How do people go about if they need wheelchair service? How do you set that up?
So wheelchair service in the United States is going to be provided by the airline. So I think the easiest way to do it is when you're booking your flight, there will be a little box there that'll say something like special assistance or wheelchair service. You have sometimes different conditions or needs listed too. You select what's applicable to you. And even if you do this later after you book and you go online and you manage your trip and you add it or you call the airline, they're going to add that information to your passenger record locator number. It's usually the confirmation code, 6 letters, and that's going to tie that information to you as you go through the airport. So that's the easiest way to do it. You can also request a wheelchair on the spot if you go up to the airline ticket counter and request it. We would just suggest that you request it in advance, usually at least 24 hours. They will give you one if you ask for it last minute, but it's kind of a data thing where they're looking at how many passengers have requested this. That's how they pick how many staff members they're going to have for that day. So requesting in advance is going to help logistics and you not wait as long.
And then if you're picking up someone at the airport who has wheelchair service, is there a certain area where you go to pick them up?
Yes. So when you have wheelchair service at Charlotte Airport, you're going to have a wheelchair attendant with you that's going to help you throughout your journey. And when you arrive at the airport, they'll take you to baggage claim. They'll be able to get your bags. And then outside on the curb, there is a little special area. Everything's kind of sectioned off down there. You know where to go, and there's a special area that your wheelchair attendant will take you.
Okay. And once you're in the airport, thinking about people who may have some physical, impairments, Is there any way to help if they need to use the restroom, for example?
Mhm. So with that wheelchair service, if that's what you're getting, you are going to be able to ask your attendant to go to the bathroom or go to concession, go buy a t-shirt, things like that, and they'll help you with that.
And now some of our families, are struggling with cognitive impairment. What happens if the spouse who doesn't have cognitive impairment has to go to the bathroom? Is there a way to have someone watch the person with the issue so they don't wander off, or should they?
If you're using wheelchair services, there is going to be that person that's with you anyway, so that's the best case scenario.
Okay.
If not, you could make the request to have an escort. You can send them without wheelchair service to be with you. There are also other options if you really want to make sure that you're covered or that have very specific assistance. You can book things like a concierge service that will basically send someone in at any point of your journey, even if it's just a layover, and they'll stay with you and they'll assist you through that. And
the concierge service is something you can set up through the airline when you're booking your travel?
The concierge service is separate. There's a separate company, and that's a paid service, so that's going to be different from what the airlines are offering.
Okay.
But if you really wanted that peace of mind, that dedicated specific person, that's an option as well.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jessica with Prospect Airport Services here at the Austin Airport. So just super quick for you all, if you book a wheelchair service, the attendee will leave the person. But if you have someone with a cognitive disorder, you're going to want to book a DPNA service. That means the attendee will not leave that person at any time. They'll ensure they go to the restroom with them, go to the gate with them, and they'll sit at the gate until that person gets on the aircraft. So it's just a different type of service.
What was that called again, Jessica?
It's a DPNA service. And every airline, it's the same code for every airline. So if they choose that one, that means that personnel will stay with them their entire trip.
So when you're making your booking, you ask for DPNA, or you just say the person has a cognitive?
So when you're making your booking, you can request, it has a list of what you can request, essentially an assistant, a meet and assist, a wheelchair, an aisle chair. That's when the person has to be lifted out of the aircraft. And there's another section that says DPNA. That means that we'll assign a specific person to go pick up your loved one or you if needed. And they'll take you to a restroom, to a restaurant stop, and to your gate. But instead of leaving you, they'll stay at that gate with you until you board that aircraft. In addition, if you have over 2 hours of a layover, they will bring that person up to a specific room for DPNAs where they can sit comfortably in a couch or anything like that before their boarding. So they're not out in the open with all the chaos going on. And that's only with 2 hour layovers.
What specifically does DPNA stand for?
Give me 1 second. I actually have my DPNA manager here. She has all the details. Let me grab her and have her come over here and talk to you guys.
Thanks, Jessica.
Well, the other question I would have for Liz, what if someone needs help on the airplane, getting to the bathroom or something like that?
That's, of course, going to be helped by the airline, the flight attendant. So I would suggest letting a flight attendant know you have that call button above your seat. And then airplanes should typically have wheelchair aisle seats. So they're thinner, they're narrower, because the airplane is narrower than the chair that you're brought to the gate with. The flight attendant will ask you and help you get to the bathroom. There's always at least one accessible bathroom on an airplane.
So are walkers typically checked in, or do walkers get gate checked, or do walkers go on the plane with patients?
That depends. I think there is an area on the plane where there's a little bit of room for, smaller foldable mobility devices. I would ask your airline in advance if you need to, but those larger items especially, they'll take those from you when you get into your chair to board, and they'll check them, and then when you land, they're going to bring those right back up to you for use.
Okay. Are there any other specific accommodations at the airport that we haven't talked about that we may not know about that you'd like to share?
There are, for cognitive and mobility related issues. There's a program called the Hidden Disability Sunflower Program. This was actually started in the UK, and it is all over the world. Not every airport has it, but it's growing in popularity. And it's basically generally a lanyard, a bracelet, a pen. It's going to be a green background with the yellow sunflower on it. It's a discreet way to, if you want to, self-identify as having a non-obvious disability. It will signal to airline staff or airport staff that you might want to be checked on, watched out for, asked if you need assistance. It doesn't give you special privileges. It's more of an awareness tool, because we believe that the best way to assist someone is to have them tell us what would be beneficial to them. Everybody's different, even if you have the same disability. There's such a scale. So that is a tool that you can use. I would also mention that TSA has a program called TSA Cares. You can file a form online or give them a call, and you can make a case so that they will have all of your information, your assistance requests ahead of time. They'll give you a case agent. They'll talk to you before your arrival at the airport, let you know all that. You can have a TSA card that you can show someone when you get to TSA, and that's a really great tool, especially since that's a very stressful part of the airport experience.
So if I get a sunflower, can I get through security faster?
No special treatment, but
Well, Dr. Edwards, you've been traveling an awful lot the last year or two. I know because I'm helping to cover your patients while you're gone. No, but in all seriousness, tell us some of the things that you noticed or things that you feel like our patient base may be challenged with during traveling, whether it's movement or memory related.
Well, I think it's really important to understand that travel and doing things with your family and being able to go is very important. But the ability to travel and the joy of traveling depends on the stage that you're in. Okay, if you are early, let's say that you have mild cognitive impairment or early dementia, that's a completely different situation than if you're moderate or more severe. Okay, so with mild cognitive impairment or early dementia, things that we want to stress is that if you're planning a trip, you want to plan wisely. The biggest mistake people make is that they will have travel arrangements that are totally impossible to, here they are traveling with someone. They haven't programmed enough time at an airport. They don't realize that they're going to have to go a lot of distance to get to, so that they need to get the wheelchairs. Also, on any given day, when you're in this country or wherever you are, there's a tendency to overbook. That we want to do this at 9 o'clock, this at 11 o'clock, this at 1 o'clock, and what happens is fatigue comes in. When you have fatigue, it automatically will translate into anxiety, and anxiety is what you don't want if you're traveling. Okay, so there's a couple of things. The time of year you travel. If you have someone that's got cognitive impairment, the last place you want to be is Thanksgiving at the Charlotte Airport. Did y'all hear about what happened there? I was there. I had to pick up my granddaughter on Wednesday night, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they closed the arrival ramp, and so everyone had to go on the departure ramp. It was an absolute catastrophe. Traveling at certain times is not smart. The other thing is, if you're traveling with someone that's impaired, that has any kind of cognitive issue, it's always good to have another person there. Let's say that you're going to go to New York City and you have a granddaughter or a grandson that's home from college. Pay for them. I guarantee you, take them with you. All right. Even a younger child, an 11 or 12 or 13-year-old, they get to go with their grandparents or their, and they get to be alone with you. But also they grow because they have the responsibility of helping someone that's a family member that needs help. So use the resources that you have. But if you can get another person, it makes all the difference in the world. If you're in that airport and you have to go to the bathroom, okay, it doesn't. The world has changed. You just go right in. It's easier, obviously, taking a female into the male than a male walking into the female, although that's getting less racy as, we're going along. But don't let that, don't let an accident happen just because you're afraid to go in to the bathroom, all right? The second thing is with the middle stages. What happens is that, for instance, we have people, two families that have gone on river cruises, and when you are traveling, you don't hydrate. And the reason why you don't hydrate is because you don't want to get up and pee all the time. So what happens is dehydration leads to confusion, especially in the middle stages. So we've had two couples get sent home on a river cruise because they were in a certain area and the patient was confused and the caregiver was off doing something else. If you're on one of those cruises and you're confused, they're going to take you off of it because they're afraid you're going to end up in the drink. Okay? So you just have to be very careful about hydrating and making sure that people get their medications. Late stages, story. I had a couple that they owned a company, and they were extremely wealthy people. I mean, and the patriarch had significant dementia, and the solution by the wife was to try to take him all over the world. So they decided to go to the Tulip Festival in Holland. And they put him on the plane to come to, they have a stopover in Dulles. And when they get to Dulles, they get off the plane, and all of a sudden he's confused. And he says, "Where are we going?" And his wife says to him, you know damn well where we're going. We're going to the Tulip Festival, and we're going together. And he said, "I'm not going with you." He was confused. The next thing you know, they have an argument. The airline people come up, and then he's yelling at her, and then the cops come up. The next thing you know, they're taken to a room, and they're on a plane back to Charlotte. They're not going with her, okay? So she comes in and talks to me about a week later, and she said, what should I have done? How could I have handled that better? When she was coming off and she saw that he was confused, if she had gone to him and said, "This is confusing to me. Do you mind if we sit down for a minute and let me get my bearings, and then we'll see where we're going, but I'm a little confused." If you're ever dealing with a patient that's confused and a little bit combative, if you apologize or you take the burden on you, they're going to calm down right away. An apology will always evoke a response from another human being. "I'd like to apologize." They're going to calm down. So if she had just said that, "Let me get my bearings and then we'll go on," and then there's not a line between you, and then you're together and you're trying to figure it out. Okay. One last thing. In holidays, oftentimes, and there is a point in time in the disease that travel is not recommended. Okay. That it causes too much anxiety and the people that are going don't enjoy it, and it gets dangerous. So in the later stages, you still want to have the patients around you and things, but getting on saying, "Oh, I think that they'll like to see Scotland one more time." No. Okay, it comes to the point where, no, this is not a smart thing to do. We'll just try to make a life out of what we have left. But let's talk about Christmas. When you are entertaining people, when you think that mom or dad wants to still be with you at Christmas, there's a couple of things that you can do to make sure that this is a good situation. One is shorter intervals. Coming and saying, "We're going to be in Thanksgiving, we're going to arrive at 9 o'clock and go home at 9 o'clock. It's not going to work. The patient's going to get anxious, they're going to get agitated. Okay? Shorter intervals. Maybe it's a time that they have a place to take a nap, but it's important not to overwhelm them because they will get very anxious. The second thing is alcohol. It's not okay for granddad who has dementia to throw down a couple of scotches. That's not going to work. Okay, so alcohol, plan on having non-alcoholic or whatever you can do to kind of limit that. And the third thing is I like to have a family member with the patient at all times. It might be a grandchild, it might be a nephew, or even a daughter, but someone there to kind of give them a perspective of what's going on, especially at Christmas. Granddad, we're opening presents now, and this is what's going on. You just kind of lead them through so they keep their balance. So we can still have a really good time, but we have to think ahead. We have to plan on what they're like and what they're seeing. Because what we do is we think, oh, they're going to want to be around us, and it's going to be just like it always was. Well, that's when things go south.
Do you have specific recommendations when people say, well, how do I, we can't avoid the fact that there are going to be a lot of people at the airport. How do I help my husband, or how do I help my spouse cope with the fact that there are going to be a lot of people, strangers, the anxiety that comes with that, and how do you advise them?
Well, I like to travel with a companion or another family member. I like threes.
Yeah.
I like threes, okay. And it just makes all the difference in the world because, in the middle stages and the late stages, you can't leave them alone. You think you can. You say, "Oh, I'm just going to pop in here." You come out and they're gone. They're panicked. They don't know where you are, and they go look for you. So it is exhausting because you're always thinking about what the dangers are. But having another person there is. And companions, oftentimes people love to travel, and the people that you travel with, you will get to love them. Okay, they'll make your job a lot easier. But I like threes.
Well, I think we had a number of questions that were sent in, and we can go through some of those, and also we can check the chat box for ones that have popped up since. I think we've actually covered a number of these already. How do we best get through TSA? If my husband has dementia and insulin-dependent diabetes, they can comment on that. On the TSA website, it talks all about the medications and things we can do. And I think, Jessica, you had talked about the DPNA designation that you can request. I think that's for somebody who has cognitive impairment and should not be left alone. So I think that's one way I did not
hire a third person.
Right. I didn't know much about that. That was good to hear. And I think, were you able to find out what that stands for, or are you still?
Yes, I actually brought my, her name is Linda Schultz. She's with Prospect Airport Services, partner with American Airlines. She runs our unaccompanied minors and department with our DPNA. So she's going to go into a little bit of detail about the service.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hi, guys. So a DPNA stands for a disabled passenger needing assistance, which can range from anywhere from them just needing help because they get lost around the airport to having dementia. But we have an agent that picks them up at the gate and is with them the entire time. If they have a 2-hour layover or longer, they come up to our room that has staff the entire time with them to make sure that they're cared for. And if they have a shorter layover, we'll take them straight to the gate and we have someone sitting with them the entire time, just helping them with anything that they need to make sure that they're okay.
And so people can request that through the airline when they're booking their tickets?
Yes, sir.
And I think the biggest thing to know about the distinction, because we've seen it multiple times. I've worked actually in Austin and here as well. And we see people book the wheelchair service thinking that the attendee will stay. And that's not the case. And the DPNA wanders off or they end up found in baggage. And that's how we find out they're a DPNA passenger. It's not really widely seen. So just knowing that DPNA service is actually there, it lets us know that, okay, someone needs to be with this person at all times. And they need to be cared for and taken care of. And if anything does happen, someone can be there to assist. And if they do get a bit overwhelmed, they can contact the loved ones because we have those numbers on file to contact them with those DPNA passengers.
Okay.
One of the things that I like is for even now when we're traveling as a family, we're all whole. We have these air tags, and each of us has an air tag. And we put it in our back pocket so we can find it. But if you have someone that's impaired or and you have that air tag, you go on your phone and you know exactly where they are. So it gives you just one last sort of one last level that you know that you can find them if you lose them.
Do you track them on your phone with the air tag?
Right. Problem is that the air tags will tag, they keep telling you about your bags. And so Mary and I are flying to Philadelphia, and all of a sudden Mary's phone goes off. And she said, "Oh my God, my baggage is in Wilmington, Delaware." She said, I knew they'd lose it. Well, we were flying over Wilmington, Delaware. She said, "Oh, okay, I get it."
I think the air tags, which I hadn't heard of those before, and also I know with iPhones and with Androids and with Apple Watches. There are different ways to track each other, the Find My Friends sort of apps. Philips makes the LifeLock 360 devices that are good to have, so that way you don't lose someone in the airport. So a lot of different options for tracking, technology these days. One question always comes up around the anxiety around packing. Does anyone have any specific recommendations on how you kind of conquer that, or how you tackle that, or what do you, with your medications, with whatever it might be?
I have a big, big white marker board, whiteboard, I guess, erasable, dry erase markers, and I have put just a very detailed, 4 columns of everything and where it goes in suitcases, so that I don't miss anything. Everything I've ever forgotten is on that list for sure.
There we go.
Anything I'm afraid I might.
Cedric, did you already talk about your new medication counter?
I did not. Something else that I just built for myself recently. Just a spreadsheet that enables me to add up all the pills that I have in the different stashes around the house, and just to make sure that I have enough to cover the trip.
And this is, you can download this from your blog, right?
Yes.
I learned something interesting. One of my patients was going to India for 4 months, and they wanted a 4-month supply of their medication. The insurance company denied it because they said, well, you just had it filled. We're not going to give you another 4 months. They explained the situation, and so they contacted us and said, I just had to sign a sort of thing. It was called sort of a travel, deferral or something, but they then gave 4 months supply of the medication to the patient, so they were able to go and not have the worries. One of the questions was, can you get a prescription filled while traveling in Europe if your supply is low or if you lose it? We're not able to prescribe medication in Europe, but in different situations, kind of going to a pharmacy and telling them, I've got Parkinson's, or I have diabetes, and I lost my insulin, or I lost my levodopa. How can you help me? They can advise you as to what to do. We've been in situations overseas where that's happened, and so they're usually very helpful. Most people aren't trying to abuse things like insulin, and so it's just important to know that. Go to a pharmacy, but they can always instruct you on what to do.
They will fill it. Carry a list of your medications, okay, separate from the medication. And also keep your medications with you. You don't pack it. You put it in your backpack and you carry it with you. Because, if you get separated, that's pretty easy. But if you go in and you say that this is my prescription, I'm on Eliquis or whatever, they're going to do everything they can. Now, the only thing they won't do is narcotics. They're not going to give you narcotics.
One of the questions, Dr. Edward, was we're planning a family reunion in Costa Rica, which sounds really nice. We're working to make it a good experience for my mom and for all of us. Do you have specific suggestions for managing sundowning in a new place?
Okay. All right. So again, we go back to stages. All right. So if mom is sundowning, you know that she's not mild. She's moderate or going towards severe. All right. Preventing sundowning. One is hydration. 2, fluctuations day to day. 4 things. 1 is hydration. 2nd, if they're diabetic, blood sugar fluctuations. The 3rd thing is medication errors, that we've forgotten to give medications. With the patients don't manage their own medication in this setting. It is the person that's whole manages the medication while they're on the trip. Okay, because they can get confused and they'll take it again. Patients with memory loss don't forget to take their medication. They forgot they took it and they'll take it again. And the last thing is sleep. And of course, what is the one thing that happens with jet lag? So we're going to get some confusion. If there is a pattern of confusion, I would send them, hopefully we would know early, but we use a drug called trazodone. And we give it about a half hour before they start to have the agitation with the sundowning. And 80% of the time it works really beautifully. The problem is 20% of the time we get the exact opposite, and they get jacked up big time. Okay, that's a medical term, jack. I would like to know more about this situation about Mom. And are they from Costa Rica? Do we know anything about the details?
No.
Okay. Because if we're going to use Trezor, I'd like to make sure it's okay before I say it, because I don't want anybody going nuts in Costa Rica.
One of the things that I've recommended to families in these situations, when you're traveling, if you're worried about the disorientation or the sundowning, take certain things with you that are very familiar to the individual. Whether it's a favorite blanket that soothes them at night when they're sleeping, or on the nightstand, what familiar items do you keep there? Do they normally have their alarm clock, or do you normally have your wedding photo or something that helps orient them, that will kind of redirect the anxiety? Music is a great one. Certain people listen to certain types of music when it's time for bed, and to have those playlists or to have those things, I think is another useful thing to do.
One last comment on this is that, as I said, there is a point where you think that the person that you're taking is going to be able to have a very positive experience at this, family reunion, and everybody's going to be there, and and there's a point where, the red flag is that they get confused and sundown. There's a potential that they're getting really confused, could ruin this trip for everybody. So we would need to discuss exactly what the reality is and whether or not it's a good idea to go.
One of the questions centers around COPD and oxygen requirements, and so you commented that you can take the oxygen tank through security, you can take it all the way to the gate. What happens if somebody is oxygen dependent when they get on an airplane?
In some cases, you might want to have your physician write a, fit to fly document paperwork to determine that. Now, I'm not a TSA official or anything. I think that it's classified as a hazardous object.
Yeah.
So that's something I just do way more research into before you consider flying.
Okay.
Make sure that you know exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure there are different canisters and different things that are more compliant or not. I mean, obviously, a compressed gas on an airplane, probably not a great idea, but yeah, yes, sir.
I can add a little to that. My wife, Jean, has COPD, and we flew recently to Key West and purchased an Imogen portable battery-powered.
About that big.
And TSA does approve that.
Yeah, they let me
comes
through.
with a TSA sticker on it. And
it's a compressor. I mean,
it's a battery-powered compressor.
Well, not a compressor. It's a what do you call it? Because what it's doing is taking the oxygen out of the air. It's not under pressure.
It's not under pressure.
Right. It's a
concentrate.
Yeah, concentrate. There you go.
It's a battery-powered concentrate.
There you go.
And it's we found that it made some rattling and some noise. That was the only downside to it. And the one we purchased was like 4 pounds or 2.4 pounds.
Wow.
It wasn't much bigger. It was half the size of
like the size of a book.
A book.
Yeah.
And it was handy to use at night, although they recommend using continuous oxygen rather than intermittent.
Right.
But the intermittent did provide the ability to keep her oxygen levels, 94, 92, which were pretty good.
That's wonderful here. Thank you for that.
That's good. It's a good.
Are there any other questions from the audience that are actually here in the room, or specific comments before we look at the chat box?
Isn't it Find My Phone or Track Your Spouse or whatever was really effective for us when it at one point took off in the middle of the night and I was in a panic, and I think Bronson actually recommended it because I went and looked at my notes recently.
Yeah.
And it wasn't recent though, but my son was able to track him exactly where he was, and I'm telling you, it was miraculous.
Yeah.
I was ready to call the cops.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and that's just planning ahead. Just really, I'll try to think of what could go wrong, because usually it does.
we were 3 years ago, we went to California to a wedding, and we got diverted. Like, but it's just whatever reason. And my daughter was with us, and she's just great. Was able to help us change and transition and do all the gates and get the flights done in about 30 minutes. It's incredible. But we ran into an issue at the Dallas airport with the wheelchair systems. Everywhere we went, they wanted a tip. And I noticed it at Carolina's Medical. So, they changed Atrium. They changed it so there's no tipping out front, which keeps things moving. So I just wanted to add that. Probably not a good idea if you got someone that's anxious and they change us. They take us. Dallas is so big they take you about 200 yards, and then they change you over to Joe, and then you go to an elevator and go upstairs 2 stories, and they turn you over to Bob, and Bob would take you down to this level, and they turn you over to Sue. And every time you got there,
they expected a tip.
Yeah, what I do is I'd hand
the money.
Bob, as the first guy, you didn't hand Bob about $100 bill. Say, Bob, you're my man. You get me where I want to go. I don't want to meet Bill or Joe.
I know, it was unbelievable.
And all of a sudden, Bob will get you there, but it'll cost you $100.
It's going to depend for the airline and their wheelchair service providers. It's not something that the airports themselves control.
The airport doesn't want you tipping them.
Yeah.
Well, Dallas, instead of a wheelchair, they have these, what would you call them? Golf carts.
Electric carts.
They're like 2 golf carts together.
Yep.
So they take you and your luggage. Yeah. So, I mean, they can fit 4 people and their luggage on there and zoom out. And what they did is, like, for each building, you got a new person. That's what they did. The person changes, not the cart, but the person changes.
Oh.
So,
My understanding that's going to be logistics based
I
on
think
their
they need to
end.
work that out.
It's a union thing, I'm guaranteed.
I did it.
money part of it.
So you
unexpected. So.
Yeah, it sort of threw us.
Yeah.
Are there certain questions in the chat box?
Well, there is a question here that was sent as a private message, but so I'll just leave out any details. But basically, it looks like somebody had an issue about 4 years ago with attendant service out of ILM. I don't know which airport that is. But she bought a specific front section seat for her mother that cost more and had more leg room. And she asked for an assistant to help her get to the gate and then another one to help her get from the plane to the new gate. And because she had assistants, she boarded early. And so they didn't honor that front seat and instead put her in a smaller seat in the back of the plane. And it had less leg room and was less comfortable. And so she hasn't relied on airline assistance ever since. That was about 4 years ago. And she's hoping this was just some kind of a glitch that maybe doesn't happen anymore.
It definitely doesn't sound right.
No.
I can't fully speak to that because I don't work on airline, but that doesn't sound right. You can get early boarding if you have a disability for any flight.
But you get boarded to the seat you purchased, not
You should.
back in
Is
plane.
my understanding.
Okay.
You pay for it.
Yes. I think the only issue they would run into is if that person wasn't, say they didn't check luggage or anything like that, and they didn't check themselves in digitally, it can show that they were not checked in for their flight. So their seat can be, when they're looking for someone to sit, if they're not checked in, they could just give the seat away sometimes. Now, while that's rare, it is something that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very seldomly, because once you cross TSA, you also get an alert to the airline. So it's just a bit tricky on that end. A large part of it, as well as when the agents know your seating assignment and you think you're in the wrong seat, if she knew, a large part of it is just speaking up to the flight attendant. Hey, my boarding pass says this, someone's in my seat. That could have been the biggest thing, is someone sat in her seat and nothing was said about it.
Nothing makes you madder though that you've paid for legroom or something, and then someone says to you, "Oh, well, and I think they do this as a routine. They say, I'd like to sit with my husband, and so would you mind switching?" And my answer is, you've spent enough time with your husband. No, I'm not moving. Okay, so I get pissed off, but I ain't moving. Okay.
The other scenario would be if you bought a child seat, or not an aisle seat, but an emergency row seat,
Right.
you need to be deemed that you could assist in the case of emergency, so they would move you then.
Yeah. Well, I hope that answered the question for the person. Are there any other questions? You're free to turn your microphone on and ask away, or type it in the chat and we'll read it. And if not,
then my final question for Jennifer, hearing the things that we've heard, and I've definitely learned a lot today about services in the airport, does that make you feel less anxious about traveling, or does it make you feel more anxious about traveling?
After I've gotten used to doing a lot of research.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned is that if you get the wheelchair, even if you feel great and you want to walk to the airport, take the wheelchair.
Take the wheelchair.
It doesn't, I fight with this. So I can get out of the airport for eventually. No, it's there for you. You just take the wheelchair. Don't let your pride get in the way or anything.
Just good advice.
Yeah.
It'll be a lot easier to get the wheelchair at the start.
Yeah.
Where your gate, it's a little harder to find it when you're already halfway through.
Yeah, if you have a problem midway or something. Yeah.
All of a sudden, Parkinsons kicks in. To go through the thing.
so get it before you need it.
Yeah, get it before you need it. And it's the anxiety.
And I would say that research about familiarization is something that I even do. We have maps of airports online. We have, every airport now has an app on your phone. Some of them, even when you land, will ding you and say, you're going here. This is the map. If you want to activate that and follow the step-by-step instructions. If we walk through videos on airports' YouTube channels, the airline app will let you know if you do have a gate change immediately, so you don't have to.
You're making me nervous. I'm getting anxious now with all these apps and stuff.
There's two. I use Charlotte is wonderful with the wheelchairs. I've never had a problem. I've always been at the gate, and when you walk in the front door, the wheelchairs are
Right there.
They're right there. And you just, you give them they will ask you for your ticket, on your phone. They'll take a picture of it, and then they base it on when your flight's taken off. But I've had no problems.
But all the airports should have an accessibility page, and that's going to have contact information. So
we've got one more question. In making plans for Christmas, my mom was very excited, and now that the time is coming closer, she tells me she doesn't need us to come and doesn't want to participate. Should I press, or should I let her decision be the word?
Well, one of the things about Parkinson's is this, because Parkinson's, one of the things that occurs that's part of the disease is social anxiety. That we can ask you, would you like to do something on Monday? And you say, that sounds like it's going to be really fun. And then Thursday night, you say, I ain't doing it. Now, I would try to allay the anxiety and say, because usually the patient, once they get there, they really enjoy themselves. So I don't let the social anxiety dominate. But if it's this is Parkinson's now, but if it's a dementia patient and all of a sudden you start to see a pattern where they're getting very anxious when they're asked to do things, then I would honor that. But in the Parkinson's, really try to get them there because their anxiety will go down and they'll enjoy it. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Well, I just want to thank our panelists and of course, thanks to Dr. Edwards for your comments, but also thank you for, putting this wonderful place together for us. 10 years in running.
Thank you for taking over. I like that. And to Janet in the back. But one of the things that is, I love the fact that y'all come and we have these people on Zoom because what you want is sort of the anxiety. You want people to be able to enjoy their lives. And the anxiety takes away, it makes us mourn the loss of things that we had and instead of enjoy the things that we
feel like.
Absolutely. Make a life out of what we have left. And so that's what this is really about.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you all.
much. Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Enjoyed it.
Okay.